Hi everyone, Sid here, back in the car. Today I would like to address the other elephant in the room that I threw out there during my video on the DNC and RNC. I kind of, in retrospect, I enjoy when I make a video that kind of forces me to make other videos to clarify things that I said. The same thing happened when I did the Trump versus Sanders video. And by the way, there's one issue that I've yet to return to in that video, but that is not today's topic. Today I'd like to talk about the Libertarian Party, because I will say that when I shot that video 2 videos ago and I said that I'd never watched a Libertarian Party debate, it was kind of embarrassing to me, considering that by the standards of people who are running for office, they're probably the ones that represent my values the most. And I figured, you know what, I'm going to rectify that. So I watched a couple debates, and I gotta tell you, it was really, I enjoyed watching both debates, but at the same time, it kind of reminded me why I hadn't watched one until then. And it was kind of on my to-do list, but when I started watching them, that's when it became clear to me. Because coming back to my pro wrestling analogy, watching the Democrat and the Republican debates is kind of like watching Raw and SmackDown. And coincidentally, one of them is red and one of them is blue. But watching the Libertarian Party debate, to me, it was kind of like watching this backyard wrestling federation that only has really good cruiserweights. Cruiserweights are great. They fly around. They do that twisty thing that luchadors do that ends with the drop toe hold. And it was really enjoyable, but it's the production value just isn't there. And the takeaway to me was how unelectable consistent libertarianism is. Because the complaint that I often hear about libertarians is that, and I think this is valid actually, that people in the Libertarian Party aren't, quote, real libertarians. I definitely agree that they're not as consistent as I would like them to be, let's put it that way. But what really came to the forefront to me was that libertarianism that isn't watered down really has no shot. I am not surprised at all that Gary Johnson is their candidate. And I think that if your goal is to get a libertarian in office, he's probably the one to go with. I was aware of him back when he was a Republican. I heard him speak on Free Talk Live, and his record of basically vetoing everything that he could when he was in office was really good to me. It sounded good to me. And I remember about a month ago when my brother, who had overheard a Gary Johnson interview, and he calls him Larry Johnson, which I find very cute, but I remember my brother bringing up Gary Johnson because he had overheard him. And I said to him, when he asked my opinions of him, he's no Ron Paul, but he's still better than Trump and Sanders put together times 10. And that is definitely true. But when I looked at his competition during the during the Libertarian debates, it was clear to me that he was one of the more electable ones. I think Austin Peterson would have been a viable contender to him in the sense of getting someone electable to be your candidate. But there's another one that jumped out to me, who's Darryl Perry. I remember watching that debate and thinking many times, I was listening to Darryl Perry speak, and I was blown away by how consistent he was. And I kept thinking, why is this guy even running? And I remember when I read, like, in the text under his face, that he was from New Hampshire. I'm like, of course he's from New Hampshire. That makes sense. And I think that if Daryl Perry was any more consistent, he wouldn't even be running. It kind of amazes me that he's running at all, although in his opening speech he did say that he wanted to make the Libertarian Party libertarian again. And later on, I remembered that I was actually quite familiar with Daryl Perry because he's one of the hosts on Free Talk Live, which I hadn't listened to in a while. And he was the host on one of the shows that I listened to recently. And I was like, oh, Daryl. And then it all kind of clicked. I had heard him many times before. And something that fascinated me during that debate, I'm going to focus on the one that is not Fox News, although I watched both. I watched the C-SPAN one and the Fox Business one. And I gotta say, you're watching a libertarian debate when the crowd boos you for saying that you support driver's licenses, and the crowd boos you when you say that the government should prevent people from selling crack to children. And the funny thing is, I'm right there with you. When Daryl Perry said that basically everything should be as legal as tomatoes, he is absolutely right. I agree with you. I'm like, yes, I agree with you. That is cool. But the fact that you're booing when someone says the government should prevent people from selling crack to children, you gotta realize how you come off when you do that. I totally agree with the sentiment. Yes, it is a failure in parenting. It's not the government's job to protect you from yourself. Yes, but the bottom line is there is a demand for statism. And if you want, let's say Daryl Perry was successful in his goal of making the Libertarian Party libertarian again and became the candidate, then my prediction in that scenario would be that the Libertarian Party would go back to being this even more fringe party that would rank its accomplishments in terms of numbers of votes instead of a percentage of the vote, which is a key nuance. And by the way, in the introduction to that C-SPAN video, I think it was a lady who was giving a short history of the Libertarian Party. She was totally speaking in terms of numbers of votes, which I found striking. Now, I'm going to segue into a video I saw a couple weeks ago, which was a short rant of Mike Tucker speaking about Donald Trump. And I'll say this about Trump. As much as I love watching his campaign, as much as I love watching him run, if I lived in the States, I wouldn't show up to vote for that guy. And Trump is like, in the choice between Trump and Hillary, I predict wildly different kinds of disaster for both of them. But I still am of the opinion that Trump is the lesser evil, but for wildly different reasons between those two. Now, this Tucker video was explaining things that I found very valid about why Donald Trump is the enemy of freedom. And he totally is. He might not be as bad as Hillary, in my opinion, but he is definitely not the friend of liberty-loving people. And when I shared that video, I wrote, there are plenty of legitimate reasons to be anti-Trump, but unfortunately, I almost never hear them. And in that video, he talked about how there is a third option, which is Gary Johnson. And I think that if there ever was a time for a third-party candidate to make history, now is the time. Will that happen? I don't think so. And again, I wouldn't show up to vote for any of these, including Johnson. But at the same time, like if you're eligible voter in the United States right now, what I would rather see you do in my deepest heart of hearts is to not show up. But if you're gonna show up, and you're gonna show up to vote for someone and not spoil your ballot, which is, I guess, also acceptable. First of all, whatever. Second of all, you might as well vote for Gary Johnson. I'm reminded of a picture that another Facebook friend of mine shared. It was this huge crowd of people, and they all shot up into this giant common speech bubble which read, "I don't vote for third-party candidates because they can't win." And it is true that, well, again, within the framework of voting, I've already covered voting. I'll link to that series below. Within the framework of voting, yeah, I think that voting for your conscience as opposed to strategizing and hedging your vote would be the better approach. But there's a reason why even here in Canada, where we have about 5 parties, it's still what I call a de facto 2-party system. It's the it's the Liberals and the Conservatives passing the puck to each other, and the only difference that all these other parties make is that sometimes we have a minority of government as opposed to a majority government. So yeah, a minority government is okay, I guess. But yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought there. So, like I said, if there was ever a time to vote for a third-party candidate and make history, I think that now is the time, because as another Facebook picture I saw, like, you have the left nut and you have the right nut when you can go for the Johnson. Yeah, I guess. I don't think he's going to win, but I think that of all the people, if I was going to show up, he's the one that I would vote for if I didn't want to spoil my ballot. I have the nagging feeling that there's something else that I forgot to bring up, but for now, I guess that'll have to do. So to summarize what I said, I loved watching the debates, but it kind of reminded me why libertarians are unelectable, because consistent libertarianism will be relayed even further off to the fringes. Like, it sounds scary when you say that even licenses should be abolished and that everything should be as legal as tomatoes, including selling crack to children. I get it. I'm right there with you. But voting is a popularity contest, and it's no wonder that the libertarians' rise in popularity it's paralleled with its watered downedness. And yeah, I get Daryl Perry's complaint that it's kind of been taken over by conservatives, but you know, that's kind of the system. So yeah, I just wanted to share that. I think I'll wrap it up. Thank you very much for watching. Leave comments below. As always, you will find links to my social media, Twitter and Tumblr, right under here. And please like and share. If you haven't subscribed to me yet on YouTube, please do. That would help me out a lot. It's really motivating to me. And yeah, that's it. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you soon. Oh, I have not given up on the shaving rants. Those are coming back. I'm working on something which isn't as ready as I'd like it to be. It's going to be a side tangent. I'm going to tell you now. The next time you see me in a wife beater, it's going to be red and it's going to be off topic. But it's important to me, so I'm doing it anyway, buddy. So on that note, you take care. I'll see you soon.